Welcome back to the Cafe My Uniqas. On this episode, I'll be talking about something a bit different. It's going to be a Storytime series where it's going to be a bit more off the cuff, and I feel like it could be a mix of my personal story times and also yours if you're interested. If you actually want to submit story times, you can contact me via my business Gmail. Anyways, I kind of wanted to do this. The reason why I made this channel was to share my thoughts. As like a chronically online black girly who's also on the spectrum, and my issues that come with it. And I was like, and after like having a certain incident in my life's like petty teenager drama, it definitely made me want to do like a little storytime playlist. So yes, but first we're kicking it off with like something that's close to me, my diagnosis story. So after all of these diagnoses, I ended up being diagnosed with autism and NVLD. I couldn't go into the specifics. I'll just cover the basics of it because I'm not a mental health professional in any way. I guess the only qualification is that I have them, which isn't really much, but so, autism is a type of neurological disability. Autism affects everything from how you develop developmentally in your brain to how you process the world in terms of sensory things. And it also, the most like obvious one is that how it affects you socially. And of course, it's a spectrum, like they say. I'm on the lower support needs spectrum, which means that I might not need a caretaker and I could take care of myself pretty well, also advocate for myself pretty well. However, my main pitfalls is socialization, whereas a person who has high support needs might need a 24/7 caretaker and sometimes assisted speaking because some are non-verbal. And of course there's a gradient in between, and sometimes these other condition that I was diagnosed with is a bit less well known. It's called NVLD, or non-verbal learning disability. It's a type of illness that often gets confused with autism due to how similarly they present in oneself. I'll pull up a Google definition up here, but it's basically a condition where you have trouble processing and learning things that don't require speaking. In the case of math, which will come handy later in my story time. So now that we get these two diagnoses out of the way, let's go on to my story time, shall we? So when I was young, like toddler age, I always thought I was normal. I was like a bit extroverted. My mom described me as a bit vain, which looking back at it, yeah, I was. But I was happy if I wasn't in school. But when I was in school, it was a different story. Like, I still feel this feeling now, but like when I'm in my home, I'm like in my elements. Like, I feel emotionally regulated in my home. However, outside it's a different story. It's still pretty iffy now, but back when I was young, it was like hell because every time I like go outside walking to school, I was so overstimulated, and it didn't help that I was like very behind in like kindergarten and stuff. So behind that I had to repeat it for a bit just to get it. Yeah, besides that, I thought I was a somewhat normal kid. It was just a teensy bit weird, but aren't all kids a bit weird? My parents thought so too, until grade 1 where like my problems got a bit more worse, you say. Like not only was I barely understanding things in class, I couldn't write down stuff on the board because I realized, oh shoot, I need glasses now. I needed glasses now. And not to mention how overstimulated I was because I had to interact with other kids my age, and I didn't know what to do. Like, I tried bonding over the things girls my age were liking, like My Little Pony and Monster High. But I always felt babied by them, even though they were literal babies themselves. The babies were babying me. And not to mention how my first grade teacher liked to beat up on me specifically. Autism makes it hard for like people to handle transitions. So I basically was rendered a crying mess all the time, with me only feeling safe in my house and watching cartoons and stuff online. So my parents noticed all of this dysfunction and decided, you know what? We need to check her out. They sent me to like the little therapy clinic that I'm still surprised that we have. They ran a smaller ASD mental health test on me, and I came out positive. You're probably wondering, why? Didn't you already get diagnosed already? You don't need another one, right? Since you already got diagnosed. To that I say, it wasn't a complete test, mostly because I was too young, but it was like a little smaller preliminary test to see if I had it. This little document was kept from me after that test occurred. And I was too young to remember that test even happened anyway. So I luckily got it together in grade 2, and I went on my school life operating under the fact that I'm pretty neurotypical, just a bit quirky, you know that. However, the social things up to like grade 3, up to like the higher primary school, it got even more confusing to me. I only had like one friend who like left me, so I mostly had guy friends instead. And I met a character who I was friends with, which I'll say for like another story time. But like past that, it's the pandemic. It's my first year in online school and stuff was going down. And I'm not going to divulge in it because it's like very private. Also, it's kind of a sore area for me. But like after that, when I'm like in like my mid to late high school, they decided, hey, we should redo the test again. Around this time, I was looking into stuff like with like autism and ADHD. After I saw the document again when I was like a bit older, and I was like shook to my core when I heard that. Because I thought I was like relatively normal, and so I was combing through like Instagram infographics about autism, ADHD, and all sorts of other neurodivergencies, and I always didn't relate to it for some weird reason, even though it was supposed to like relate to like girls who were late diagnosed autistic. I thought I wasn't autistic because I didn't experience like the severe sensory issues they had. Come to find out that you don't need to have severe sensory issues to still be autistic. I also saw some weird, icky, aspie supremacy things that I've seen, but I never really fell for. I guess mostly because I was operating under the logic that I wasn't autistic. So maybe I didn't like it because I felt more offended. But anyway, the day came for like the test. My mom figured out what NVLD was. She was researching that via YouTube University, and I honestly love her for at least researching this. Because like most Caribbean moms don't even think to diagnose their child. So I'm like lucky, super lucky. The test goes on. I have to skip school to take it because it was that long. And all I'm gonna say is, if you haven't taken an autism assessment or an NVLD assessment before, I must say this, it's like taking a test, but it's for like basic things. And it's even longer than the average test. Like it's even longer. And what's worse is that they actually had me doing math. They actually have me doing math in those tests to see how good I could calculate. But turns out that's the thing that got me diagnosed with NVLD. The results came later in the month, and it was confirmed in hard paper that I was neurodivergent. Autism and NVLD, they mainly identified my repetitive behaviors and also my glaringly obvious one, my blatant lack of eye contact. My mom always harped on me about it. And not to mention, my dad compared me to Sheldon Cooper, which isn't a dead giveaway enough. I could go into much more, but you don't need to know my family. You don't need to know my family business. And also the reason they identified me having NVLD is like me having a deeper struggle in math. Like you might say, oh, math is hard for everyone, which is like, yes, that is true. However, like my autism was so bad, like my math was so bad, mostly because of my NVLD. Because you don't need to speak to do math. And I was pretty good at speaking. I was pretty articulate, especially at a young age. I honestly thought it was me watching Pinky Dinky Doo and watching PBS Kids in the morning, but nope. Turns out I was part of a neurodivergence. And they saw the discrepancy between my speaking skills and my skills in math. Turns out that's a telltale sign in NVLD, on top of other things. The reason why I didn't get confused with dyscalculia, the reason why I didn't get misdiagnosed with dyscalculia was because it's kind of different. It's like people could have the same presentations but have them for different reasons, you know? So, after I finally got diagnosed with those two neurodivergencies, I'm gonna be real when I say after I hear stories of like people who are like getting diagnosed, almost all of them feel like a weight was lifted off their shoulders and happy. And I was like, yes, good for them. But when I finally got diagnosed, I felt nothing, but it wasn't like a bad type of nothing, you know. I felt neutral about it. I guess it's mostly because my mom didn't encourage me to mask much, mostly because she accepted me for what I am. It was just like my peers who low-key made me, but like, I'm a real. Even now, I'm not valuing friendship with people my age. It's all fickle. And I feel like it's pretty cool still that I got diagnosed. It's because it's like another part of me that was like hidden from me that I didn't even know. And now that I know, I'm learning how to like accept it. And plus, I even find like autistic Uniqas and autistic women in the Bahamas where I'm from who have similar experiences to me. So I personally like it. And anyways, that concludes this very first video on Uniqa Storytimes. So subscribe and keep that Uniqa magic alive. Bye!